lug down all your equipment, and we've got a very live show that's happening right now.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and joining my panel of pumpkin heads this evening are Jason.
Hi, everyone.
Jill.
Hi, guys.
And Andrew.
Hi there.
So normally I think we would go straight into talking about some Smashing Pumpkins news, but since this is our first episode, I thought maybe we could just spend a minute or two talking about why we started doing this podcast. And we are affiliated with the hipstersunited.com website, so Jason or Jill, if you guys, one of you guys want to just jump in and talk about why you started the blog.
Well, I think it all kind of started last summer in Asheville, North Carolina. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but that's kind of the origin of the idea when we were visiting North Carolina to see the pumpkins on there.
It's at least approximately correct. I mean, we were also talking to Jeremy, I believe. He had something to do with it, but I don't know. Why are we doing the blog? I think we've got probably two big purposes. One is entertain and inform the Pumpkins fans of the world who don't have time to crawl through the muck that is the message boards of the internet. And two, to kind of get involved in this greater conversation in the blogosphere about rock music generally, a conversation that, when it is dominated by the pitchforks and the stereo gums of the world, is none too friendly to our little favorite band there. So maybe to get involved and talk to them on their level with their language and stick up for what's right and true and, that sort of thing. I don't know, that's my overarching vision and moral compass for my entire life. No, I'm kidding.
Plus, it's pretty fun.
Exactly, and I think both the fun and the conversation kind of tie into why I approached you guys about doing a podcast.
No fun at all.
No fun? All right.
Not supposed to be fun. This is dead serious.
Serious business.
This is rock and roll. No laughing.
It's a rock and roll party.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, we will.
But I approached these guys about doing a podcast for Hipsters United because, well, for one, I think that with a blog, there's a lot of, it almost feels like kind of a push technology where it's the bloggers having the conversation and everyone else listening. Where
this is totally different.
Absolutely different.
Well, this is different for me because before, as a reader, I felt like I was being talked to, and now I'm kind of part of the conversation. And this kind of does feel more like a conversation between people all at once rather than kind of individual comments and individual blog posts that kind of just are all in the same place.
So you at home, if you want to be part of the conversation, start up a podcast and invite us over, and we'll start talking to you. I'm sorry, Chris.
Or just come to the blog and comment. We love that.
That's true, we do. Well, no, I don't know. You know, my theory is when people comment, that means they don't like what you just wrote. So I don't know if we like the comments.
We like positive and constructive comments.
Sure. I don't know. I kind of like the negative ones.
We like negativity too. I'm down with that. Any response sometimes when you just put it out to the internets.
Yeah, I like to zero in on those zero comment entries and try to put a little extra thought into an article or something.
Yeah, Andy's like our plant in the audience. You're like what's that guy in the George Bush press conferences in the front row? What was that? What was that guy's name? I can't remember.
It was, oh man.
See, you're supposed to remember this stuff, Andy. That's why I bring it up.
I'm sorry.
Oh, well. We'll edit that in later.
He's our internal sting operation.
Well, Chris...
Well, that guy turned out to be a male prostitute, right?
I think he
On
did.
the side.
hey, Chris, I want to thank you as we're getting the podcast underway. I think it was a great idea. Jill and I, as we mentioned to you at the time, wouldn't have had time to start and figure out how to do this. So everyone owes Chris a big thanks, or you wouldn't be listening right now.
And hopefully at some point you guys are listening right now. But anyway, let's move on into the news here. This was kind of a slow week. The Pumpkins were kind of between legs of their tour, and we didn't get quite the bombshells that we've gotten during the past month. But I wanted to bring up one news story from the last leg of the tour in Australia. It seems Billy's causing some trouble with some of the other local acts. A band called the Presets were playing at a side stage during the festival that the Pumpkins were at in Australia, and at one point during the show, in between Pumpkin songs, it appears that Billy kind of stopped and made some comments about the loudness of the audio coming from their stage, and then went on to play a few disco beats of their own and do some kind of one-off stage banter in between. Any of you guys have any thoughts about this? Is this overblown by the media, or is this a real just Billy Corgan being Billy Corgan?
Well, actually, I was surprised that it was hardly covered by the media at all that I could find. Pitchfork didn't cover it, Stereo Gum didn't mention it, and on one hand, I thought maybe they don't care. Pitchfork doesn't like the Pumpkins. They don't like the Presets either. They've given them lousy reviews. So, Bill, like you mentioned, the Pumpkins started playing, and this disco song to the beat that the Presets, is unsa, 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 that techno groove coming across the field, and the Pumpkins started playing their own song. And, Billy, immediately, he has this whole kind of take on the whole thing. Like, the lyrics of his little song were like, look at my abs. They're perfect. Look at my ass. my ass is perfect, and it's like, so he kind of, it almost is like immediately kind of, I don't want to say it kind of reverts to this, but if you think back to high school or something, it was kind of like the whole nerds versus the jocks things for a moment, but Billy, I think, he's kind of pointing out that, or not, I don't know if he wanted to say he's pointing it out, but okay, I've kind of lost my different way. So Pitchfork and Stereogum, right? And they're not writing about this, and it makes me wonder if they did what they would say. Because on one hand, you've got Billy being Billy Corgan; they hate him. On the other hand, the Presets seem to be this sort of like this band that's got a kind of well disguised vapidity about them. I don't know. Is that a good word, Jill? Vapidity? Am I saying it right?
They're vapid.
Sure. Let me read a bit from this. This other site, Pop Matters. When I was researching the Presets, like I said, Pitchfork gave them a terrible review. Their album Beams, Pitchfork gave a 3.7, but some other sites reviewed it very well. There's a site called Pop Matters, and the reviewer's named Dan Raper, and he wrote about this album. He wrote about I can't make it up. He wrote about this album Beams by the Presets. Called it unsophisticated, promiscuous, filthy, and hedonistic. This is a positive review. He said it's bloody cool, and the album is bloody cool, and it makes its listener feel damn cool. And here's a full sentence from the review that just jumped out at me. He says, this is Dan Raper talking, and he says, I can see my friend Will strutting around with his butt out like a robot to Down, Down, Down. That's one of the songs. And it's not just that he doesn't like dance music. He's a classic rock guy, which is why I mentioned him at all. So this quote leaped out because you got this reviewer. He's imagining his friend loving this album by the Presets, and his friend is a classic rock guy, and his friend's strutting around with his butt out. And I thought it just points out that this band, the Presets, and I think there's been some other bands like them recently that ostensibly come up from these independent ranks. They don't come from a corporate system. They're not, the guys weren't on, this Kim Moyes. He wasn't on Australian Idol or whatever, So they do come up from the underground, but they're not really alternative, in the sense that I wrote a while back that alternative, that word, alternative rock, it seemed to come from like a challenge to the cock rock of the 80s, that alternative was more, I don't know, more feminine in a lot of ways, and
shoegazy.
Yeah, and it just struck me that the Presets, and this sort of thing it's like cock rock, except it's made with computers, and they're cloaking themselves, or not cloaking themselves, but they come dressed in the clothes of the underground. But I think Pitchfork's right on this. I think they call it for what it is, and I think some of these other indie bloggers that maybe aren't as good as Pitchfork, and yes, Pitchfork is talented. But, maybe they're just not catching on quite as much and not calling it for what it is. So that's my...
Well, And I think a lot of it is really dubious because most of the press I saw about the incident came from interviews that the presets did themselves. So, like, it was their perspective or their perception of the situation that Billy Corgan was really angry at him, you know, at the lead singer or the band or whatever the case may be. And they were actually giving interviews saying, they're so mad at us, when the actual footage of the disco song that they played was hilarious. I mean, I don't think it was, you know, I think it was a little bit of anger. It's along the lines of this, you know, this new cover they're playing of Britney Spears. And the lyrics, like you said, Jason, are kind of angry and like angsty, but still really biting and kind of funny to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Billy was mad, but I don't think he was mad at the presets. He didn't know what the band was. It was just this unsa coming across. And, you know, I think it conjures up a bunch of associations with Billy. I mean, he knows what that kind of music is about. He's not stupid. He's been around, you know. And but you're totally right. I mean, these interviews with this guy, Kim Moyes, of the presets, he was just going out of his way, calling Billy, you know, these names. He said, the Pumpkins have no groove. And he said something, and I didn't actually blog. I mean, I blogged one of his comments, and then he went on and did some other interview where he just went on and on again. And I didn't bother to blog it again because I just thought it was ridiculous. But in the second one, like the phrase I remember is he said something like, "I think it's all-out war between me and Billy Corgan." And I'm like, I'm just thinking, dude.
He doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, he doesn't know who you are. To Billy, it's about disco, you know, and like. It has nothing to do with the presets. It certainly has nothing to do with Kim Moyes.
And I think the funniest coincidence was I posted a couple of days ago a random remix of Super Christ that I had found just, you know, through a Google blog search or something. Something had popped up by an artist from Chicago named Angel Alanis. And this guy apparently is affiliated with the presets. And I made a special comment even in the blog post saying, you know, I think this guy is actually a big fan of the Pumpkins because of the way he did this remix. And come to find out, he's like a major collaborator with the presets. So I don't know what to make of that, but it's pretty laughable. Yeah, pretty laughable.
Yeah, my take on it after watching the video especially, so I had first heard of this just from reading the interviews with the presets, and I thought that Billy really was angry and this really was a big deal, but after watching the video clip, which you can find, by the way, on hipstersunited.com, of the kind of the disco song that Billy does, I don't even know if he's mad. He's just kind of, you know, it's between song banter. They always do stuff like that. And I think there's another case of this other band just didn't really get the joke.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, I think his distaste for what he presumed this band stood for without having anything to know about them, I think that was real, but mad is like going way too far. I mean, you know, all these reviews, I've never once seen Billy Corgan like stamp about in frustration or anger on stage. I mean, the guy's a grown-up, you know, but you constantly read people writing on blogs or something, Billy was angry, Billy was mad, and I've been to so many Pumpkin shows and I've never seen it once, and I just feel like if there was truth to these stories, and a lot of times I've been at the shows where I'll read he was mad, or he stamped off, or some random thing, and I'm just like, that didn't happen. And, you know, I think it's another one of those instances. So.
But like you said last year, you know, all girls are sluts, right?
Oh, yeah, right. There was a show in Britain, and, yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the details of it now. You'd have to find the post on hipstersunited.com.
I actually saw that interview, or that review of that show where he said that, and again, I think it was just kind of, he's joking between songs, and people got to find something to write about, and it's Billy, and he has this past with, the Sharon Osbourne thing, and the Burt McCracken thing. It must be Billy getting in fights with everybody again. He's just petulant and angry. Yeah,
and you know, in '88 he starts the band. He's 21, and today he's 41. You know, I mean, I guarantee you, when he was 21 and he was 24 and he was 26 or whatever, you know, he was him against the world, and you know, he'd gotten a lot of these things, but to think he's still that way today is crazy.
So moving on, the next news story we had from this week was an interview in Keyboard magazine of keyboardist Lisa Harriton, who is the touring keyboardist with the Pumpkins, I guess ever since the Pumpkins reunited back last May. And in the article...
Hey, Chris, you gotta be careful to say they're revived.
That's true.
Something like this. We're going to get lots of angry mail if we use the word reunited.
That's true.
Reunion.
It's not a reunion. It's a revival. That's the word I've been trying to push. But it rolls off the tongue, reunion. So I forgive everyone completely for saying it, but trust me, at least one of our readers won't be pleased, Shauna. So,
And I forget what they actually said in the article. I noticed when I was reading the article they called it a certain thing, and now I can't seem to find it. What they called kind of the Reformation of the Pumpkins.
I just pulled it up. You're absolutely right. They said reformed. Sorry.
But anyway, with the article itself, focuses on Lisa, obviously, and kind of how she got involved with the Pumpkins and kind of her background before joining the Pumpkins. And I thought it was kind of interesting that she got this job basically from a Craigslist post. So apparently Craigslist isn't all deviant sexual predators looking for prey. Apparently you really can find a job out there.
And cheapskate high-tech companies.
Yeah.
Not that I work for one of those. I think that, I actually found that article as a tip from one of our readers, and as a self-proclaimed Lisa fan, many times over on the blog, I was really kind of excited to see a little bit more about her background, because I didn't really know much about her and her family and kind of their musicality as a family and her history as a jazz pianist. And she's always struck me as a really kind of calm presence in the band, and kind of to what Jason was saying a few minutes ago, I think that it's another indication of how the band has grown up aspects, because they've chosen these really, I hesitate to say it, but she's very like grounded and earthy, but she's my age. She's, I think, 24, 25. So it was really neat to see kind of her background and her experience as it matches Jimmy, because part of the article talks about how she was hired in some aspects because she meshed with Jimmy.
I believe during her audition she even was kind of picking songs based on what she thought Jimmy would like, because she had heard about his jazz training and his jazz kind of beginnings.
Right. And that's pretty, I've always been a fan of hers, and I actually was watching the Lair performance from Australia earlier today, and she did
sexy and dirty.
Yeah, exactly. She did a really awesome job, I thought. I think that she's really developed a great chemistry with Billy too, just from a performance standpoint. So I'm excited to see more from her and what direction the band is going to take, including her in their recordings or tour schedule. So
yeah, he trusts her. He's demanding. Yeah. He's demanding. He stands there and watches her, but he believes in her, I think, for sure.
And in the article, she talks about how she doesn't really have quote unquote rock band experience, but she really has the chops to play and keep up, and the improvisational skills to do what he requires of her. And she even talks about how Billy will support you 100% if you have an idea and just run with it. I thought that was a really interesting observation about the new nature of the band too. So
yeah, when I was listening to you talk, Jill, the word that comes to mind is professional. That she's a professional, and you think back to the way the Pumpkins started, and I'm obviously a fan of the band for a long time, but they didn't start out as music professionals. Not all of them, Billy and Jimmy, I think, were committed to lifelong music making, but, think about how Billy meets Darcy. It's on the street outside a show, and she's like, yeah, I play some bass. It wasn't exactly someone who necessarily committed her entire life to music already. Jimmy and Billy are obsessed. Music is their life, and
Right.
And reading the article about Lisa, you feel like, obviously, again, music is her life, and she's like, I charted out tonight, there were no charts before, it's
Right.
that kind of thing. It's like, no, there probably weren't any charts,
Right.
And so,
she comes from a musical family just like Billy does. Like Billy's father, also a guitarist, and her parents also musicians.
That's true, and I think that really impacts how you kind of come at music and the work ethic that you have. Because if you make it your life's work, it's a lot different than if you're going at it trying to become a rock star, kind of like Jason was saying with Darcy earlier. So,
I mean, I wonder though. I mean, I don't wonder. I know a lot of people probably recoil at the word professional being applied to these rock bands. I mean, especially. The Pumpkins have always kind of been this half indie, half whatever the alternative is to indie band, and professionalism is probably something that's turned people. I mean, it is something that's turned people off on the band culturally for a long time. But I don't know. I mean, you just can't get up there and play guitar like Billy, or play drums like Jimmy, or play keyboards like Lisa. That takes a lot of work, and I think you probably should consider yourself a professional musician if that's what you do. So I don't know. It's not a turnoff to me, but
well, there's a certain when you have that strong of a work ethic, or even that demanding of a tour schedule, you've got to select people that can keep up with you, and the only kinds of people that can keep up with you are those professionals. So it's not a job for the faint of heart, I guess. But I think she's done it with a lot of panache, and even seeing her perform multiple times a year over many months, I think she's really added a lot of color to the band. And even the article talks a little bit about how they were joking around on a keytar, and she just basically went out and got one because Billy said, "Gee, wouldn't it be great, if you could contribute to the electric songs as well, kind of the harder rock songs." I thought that was hilarious. So, I mean, she says in the article, quote unquote, "It started off as a joke. We had just shot a video where I was jamming out with the guitar and having so much fun. The director said for me to do it again with some personality, and I just had a ball on that thing. Billy was joking around and said we should do it live." So she goes out and buys one. I can, I can totally pull with that. I think it's hilarious. And she does a great job on it, too. She's not, cheesy about it. She just rocks around on it.
Yeah, that's right. And what she's doing, I know she has a big key part on Super Christ. There's a key part on Come On, Let's Go. I don't know if there are any other big rock songs where she's prominent, but there might be. Haven't seen them lately. They've been in Europe and in Asia and Australia and now Mexico. So.
And when I saw them perform in Atlanta on my best work trip ever last year, I don't know if you knew this, Chris, but I just kind of happened to have to go to Atlanta for work for a couple of days last year, and it just happened to coincide with the 2 rescheduled shows after Jimmy was released from the hospital.
Oh, those are the best kind of coincidences.
Yeah, it was pretty great. But, I thought really what struck me the most there was how much fun Lisa has on stage. She just has a blast. And I was far enough up in the venue that I could see her kind of in the wings of the stage just laughing. Laughing all the way through United States at those crazy solos that Billy wanks around on in the middle of the song. She just has a fun time with the band, and I think that says a lot to both her professionalism and the nature of the band itself right now. So.
And the scariest part for me is that not only is she younger than I am, but the subject of our next news story is also younger than I am, and it just makes me feel incredibly old, even though the band as a whole is still much older than I am. But that's kind of a good segue into our next news story, that Linda Strawberry, who was previously performed with the Pumpkins and was a keyboardist on Billy Corgan's solo tour, performed a cover of the Zwan song WP at an event called the Miss Hooker 2008 Beauty Pageant, which was I'll kind of summarize this based on what I've been reading out of the LA Times website. It was an event that was created by artist Natalia Fabia, probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's worth a shot. And as an artist, she apparently paints hookers and women of the evening, but portrays them as strong, independent women. And that was kind of the aesthetic she was going for with this beauty pageant, where it was a beauty pageant, but also kind of a talent show and a burlesque performance. And some of the talent aspects of the show, besides Linda Strawberry's WP cover, also included one woman fried an egg while stripping on stage, and another performed yo-yo tricks. So unfortunately, Linda did not win the Miss Hooker 2008 crown, but I guess there's always next year.
Wow, you researched this very thoroughly, Chris.
I did.
Oh, well, it's kind of funny and kind of embarrassing to admit this in general, but I actually wasted like a solid, 30 minutes this afternoon browsing around on, I can't believe I'm going to admit this. I was browsing around on Linda Strawberry's MySpace, and yeah, I know, don't even. But because I think Jason at least knows what disdain I have for this woman. But it's interesting that she dragged out an old Swan cover because of all the songs to cover, I was just a little bit surprised. But if you'll bear with me, I'll try to find it here. I found some pictures from the Miss Hooker pageant, and there were lots of other awards and titles that they gave there, some of which I think are probably a little too risque for me to repeat here. So I don't know if I know she didn't win the whole thing, but she may have run away with another one of the titles. So
I believe the winner was Miss One Hala No Dala, something to that regard. It was an amusing name.
Yeah, Jill, I don't know. I mean, maybe covering WP in particular jumped out. I mean, it's a great song. But I of Linda Strawberry is that she's always out trying to play a song that Billy did or make some other connection to the Pumpkins, and whatever. I mean, it's it can't hurt her career to be toured with Billy Corgan, played keyboards with Billy Corgan, sang at the last show of the Smashing Pumpkins the first time before they revived themselves,
Reformed, reunited, rebirthed.
No, reunited.
Well, and even on her biography that she publishes on her MySpace, she talks about really how having a conversation with Billy Corgan made her rethink her own religious views. I mean, if that doesn't scream, daddy complex or something like that, I don't know what does. I think I don't think she has a bad voice. I think she really tries to push her own envelope, but I don't really buy into that envelope, I guess. I don't know. She's more of a laughable figure to me.
I mean, I think it's hard to screw up WP. I don't think she screwed it up. I thought it sounded fine, but man, what a strong song that is. I don't know. I can think of Billy songs that you could probably flub or that with a subpar performance would come off terribly, like Blank, maybe, or Tales of a Scorched Earth. But, I thought she sounded good. I thought the song, it reminded me of, how good I think some of those songs are. And, I understand that Billy isn't feeling them right now, but, someday maybe they'll come back. Maybe at least a couple of them.
All right, and our final news item this week is that the final leg of the Pumpkin Spring Tour began last night. And that kind of segues us into the next segment of our podcast, which is a tour roundup. And obviously we're only going to do this while the Pumpkins are on tour. And this week was kind of a short roundup since they only had one concert last night in Mexico City. And does anyone want to attempt to pronounce the name of the venue?
Yeah, well, do we really need to say it was Turn 4 of the Speedway? I know Andrew and I are both IndyCar fans. Andrew, a fan of Champ Car, who used to run at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. But Champ Car is now rolled into the Indy Racing League. Anyway, that's where the band played last night for Coca-Cola Zero Fest.
Calorie free.
I believe that's true. I don't really know, though.
And the set list was posted a little bit earlier today to SmashingPumpkins.com, and I think they got through the whole thing except for the encore. They were scheduled to do Cherub Rock as an encore, but didn't get to it. I don't know, is that usually because they run out of time, or the crowd's not into it, or how does that work?
I doubt it's the same reason every time they miss an encore, but it could be any of those things, I think.
Well, and you have to understand, and this is a little bit of, I don't know. I think they actually publish the set lists beforehand to their tour team or something. So I don't always know that they're entirely accurate. And I think that the SPFC does a really good job of trying to track down what really was played. And I think that's especially important in a lot of these international shows where there's not as much press, especially not as much English press around it. So.
What did you guys think of the set list? It was pretty standard based on the festivals they've been playing lately. I think it's a pretty solid set list considering the type of audience you'd expect at one of these festival shows. I think they actually did a pretty good job of mixing. I think they had they were scheduled to play 4 songs from Siamese Dream, only ended up playing 3, but I think they played a pretty good mix in their catalog despite some recent reviews out of Australia.
Well, I think it's the perfect opening song, and when they first reformed and were in Europe, they used Today as the opening song a lot, and I think sometimes they would open with the United States and then go into Today, which as they did at the very first show, which I thought was appropriate too, because you don't want to walk right out of the gate and be like, "Hi, we're the Smashing Pumpkins again," when you don't have half the original band members. So, but for Mexico, now they've been on tour for 9 months now. Everyone knows the deal. I think everyone's kind of halfway at least over the Reformation or the revival or there's some other word. But to get out there and just start with Today and let the crowd sing the first verse, I think it's pretty exciting. And there's a neat little video that I posted this afternoon that really gets that across. So.
Well, and I think it's important to note that they did go to Mexico, even when there were just very, very, small, teeny tiny rumors that the Pumpkins would be going to Central America or South America. I think they have a huge fan base down there. I don't know that it's really that lucrative for them to tour down there a lot. Because I read an article one time about a lot of the government permissions that you have to acquire in order to play some of these big arenas that the Pumpkins would want to play. And I think a lot of artists, even like in Colombia or Peru, get denied the ability to play because of the government regulations surrounding the actual events themselves. So, I'm really happy on behalf of the Mexican fans because they've been posting a lot. Well, they've actually posted some to our blog about being real excited that the Pumpkins have come down there. Or we're planning to come down there. And, not that this is kind of dorky, but I check out the blog statistics pretty frequently, especially the international aspect of who's coming to the blog. And we have a lot of South American and Central American readers. So I'm really happy on their behalf. And I think it's pretty obvious from that video you posted earlier, Jason, that they're really excited.
Yeah, they were pretty excited, and that's fun.
It reminds me kind of the shows I've listened to where they play in Portugal. It always seems like the Portuguese audience also is very chanty and very excited. It was kind of the same kind of feel that I got from watching the beginning of that Mexico City show.
Yeah. I think Portugal was much more over the top, though, Chris. I think you're right. The Mexico, it seemed like some of the fans did it, and then it kind of died out. Like, I don't know, but Portugal, yeah, they're insane.
And, it's hard for me even to relate in many respects because I live in New York City and, every artist and their mother comes through here. I saw Paul Simon play with Ladysmith Black Mambazo last night, a bunch of songs from, 1984. So it's like everything comes through New York City at least once or twice. Imagine what it's like if the Pumpkins don't come for, 10, 15 years to your hometown or even within a 10-hour radius.
Yeah, and the one time they played Mexico before, of course, was in '98 when they were doing that Adore tour, which wasn't really even the Smashing Pumpkins because they didn't have Jimmy Chamberlain,
right.
and they weren't really rocking. They were playing those, ballady songs. So I'm just joking, kind of, but
It definitely, the shows did have a different feel to them. I mean, I saw them in a theater where everyone's kind of sitting down. It's like going to a play. It was definitely a different feel to the shows.
It was like going to an Arcade Fire show.
No.
I know, I'm just joking. I don't know.
There's too much dancing at those.
I'm just trying to relate to the kids.
But yeah, I mean the set list looked pretty standard. I love it that they close with the United States and Mexico, but maybe that's a NAFTA nod.
Every show, Joe.
Know. Huh?
Oh, I said, they play that every show.
I know, but it just makes me giggle.
And I guess this week is the end of the tour. They've got 2 more shows in Mexico and 1 in Costa Rica, and I believe they're all kind of Enormo Dome festival shows, which is kind of the only bad thing for those fans down there, is they don't get to see really just the Pumpkins. They see the Pumpkins kind of watered down as part of a festival.
Yeah. It's true. The Costa Rica one is another one at a big speedway, so that's got to be interesting, I guess.
I guess when you haven't seen them for a while, you'll take what you can get.
Yeah, I would.
I've always wondered what it would be like to actually go to one of those shows in a sort of non-standard. I mean, I think I understand what it's like to go see them in Europe, but to go see them in Japan or Mexico, really sort of out of the way, and they don't get to go there very often. I think it would be really cool. A neat vibe. At least I'd hope. So.
Alright, so I think that's all the news we have this week. The next thing we kind of wanted to do is have a more in-depth discussion about one topic, although I guess you could say we've had pretty in-depth discussions about all of our news topics. The one that I kind of chose for this week for us was something that kind of was a news story last month, and it was such a big story that I didn't want to leave it out and miss talking about it, because I think it's a pretty big deal. And that is the kind of the story of the Virgin lawsuit, where the Smashing Pumpkins, and I guess it's specifically Billy and Jimmy when we're talking about the Smashing Pumpkins here, are suing Virgin Records for using the Pumpkins in a promotion for Pepsi Stuff, and I believe they also, Amazon.com was also involved in the promotion. And Billy is suing them, and in the lawsuit they're claiming that the deal that they kind of negotiated with Virgin in the late 90s said that kind of both parties, the Pumpkins and Virgin, own the rights to release the Pumpkins catalog, and that the only thing that Virgin has exclusivity over is the digital downloads of Pumpkins music. Am I missing anything important there? I think that was kind of the whole news story.
Well, yeah, and I think that really the interviews that Billy has done they've suggested that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we should expect record labels to do to old catalog songs to promote sort of goodwill and good nature and good feelings about products. So, I mean, I think that there's that sort of issue tied into the whole discussion that the media about really what's acceptable and ethical about this kind of, pardon my French, but this dick move that Virgin tried to accomplish but could not.
Have you actually seen the ad?
No, I haven't. I don't know if anyone's turned it up exactly where they used the Pumpkins. The details of the case I don't know anything about, really. I mean, I read what the Pumpkins said, but I don't know who's right or wrong. But I mean, one thing that struck me, as it always does, is the reaction of the indie blogosphere, the indie music writers all over the internet, and the overarching theme for most of them is, ha, the Smashing Pumpkins are worried about their integrity. Like, who are they kidding? Which I expect from these people, but and now the thing they all hang their hats on in the last 9 months is, the 7 shades of Zeitgeist, the different colors of the album that, apparently was the greatest crime ever perpetrated on the record-buying public. And I loved at the time that they put out the multiple copies of Zeitgeist that Pitchfork was daring to speak on behalf of outraged Pumpkins fans everywhere, of course, of which they were none, because they don't like the Pumpkins, and that always struck me as a bit funny. And so here are these people again saying, oh, the Pumpkins, what a joke, they're complaining about their integrity. This is a band, I can think of one commercial where I ever remember their music being a part of it, and it's that Ford Focus commercial where the guy just happens to be listening to them on his radio, and that was for, That's the Way, a song on Zeitgeist. Before that, I can't ever think of their music being used to promote products, so I think this is a band with, 15, 20 years of not using their music in this way, and therefore I can understand Billy's outrage, and, this whole thing about Zeitgeist, and that's just irrelevant. I don't see what that has to do with anything other than, this ridiculous notion that all this band cares about is money.
And I think it's pretty ironic that kind of the indie blogosphere is up in arms about this, when it seems like there's been kind of a movement in the past 5 years or so where that's how a lot of these bands are first getting heard, is through advertising.
Yeah.
Like, I can't count the number of indie bands where the first time I hear their songs is in an ad promoting something that has nothing to do with the band on TV. Some of it at least is iTunes or the Apple iPod, where it's kind of tangentially about music, but a lot of times it's even UPS or some type of jeans or some type of potato chips. So for these bands, and it's not really the bands saying anything, but kind of the same media outlets that favor those type of bands to kind of slag on the Pumpkins for not wanting to sell out just strikes of just total irony to me.
I think a lot of these writers who are saying these sorts of things, they're just older and quite haven't adapted to the new way things are, because it used to be, maybe the only band, and I don't want to say this too seriously, but you would hear of bands that got famous through their music, and then later they used music in commercials. And so in the past, to hear a song in a commercial was like, wow, they sold the song. The Stones sold Brown Sugar. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? And these days, like you said, Chris, I think that's exactly right. And so, but these old writers, they haven't quite, completely, I think, internalized that change, because I don't see anything wrong with these bands today trying to break in by using their ads on the commercials. Leslie Feist obviously is huge with the indie bloggers, and she's huge with Apple, and she's huge on TV during the ad breaks, and more power to her, really. And I don't think the Pumpkins, I don't think Billy would have anything. I haven't read anything in this lawsuit. I haven't read anything he said that begrudges anyone using their music in advertising. It's just, but when you look at it from his perspective and his band being old, and they coming from this past time where they did make it on the strength of the music, to turn around and sell Bullet with Butterfly Wings today, or to sell today, or to sell Tonight would, to him, and I think he thinks he would have a problem with that. I think he thinks a lot of the fans would have a problem with that. He's probably right. But then you see, he's got, he puts That's the Way My Love Is in a Ford Focus commercial, and probably doesn't think twice about it. And he probably says, hey, that's the way it is right now if you want to break out with a new song, and he's probably right.
Well, and I wonder if there's an element of I don't know, I don't want to overanalyze it too much, but like you were talking about Feist, I think there's a huge element of taste making involved with commercialism these days. Just, Apple is notorious for really catapulting artists into, the top 10 downloads of the week. And there's this idea that, I'm cool if I listen to this because I heard it from the Apple commercial. It's like that, it's like that blog, what the stuff white people like, Jason, that you wrote about. And I think there's a huge difference between, using a commercial to promote your music like they did with the Ford Focus commercial versus using your song or your music to try and be a tastemaker in a new commercial venture. I don't know. It seems that there's some strange line that was crossed. I mean, both from a legal aspect, of course. You don't want anybody stealing the rights that you have to make decisions about your own personal work, but also the manner in which they used it. So, and I really want to see this commercial. I would really like to see it, to see specifically how it was used.
I've got to think that's part of the problem, that, like, it's just not... I mean, it's almost like there's an acceptance now that it's okay for bands to kind of use their music if they're just new and just getting started, and it's to promote something like iTunes, where it has something to do with the band or something about music or something that the band believes in, maybe, even if it's obviously just a corporate advertisement. But I think in this case, like, the Pumpkins had no choice in the matter. They didn't get to have any say in what song was used or what they're promoting. And I think that's probably what part of the issue is, and that from the outside it looks like, oh, well, this band has already made it. Why do they need to sell their stuff? And it's almost a double standard.
Well, and maybe there should be a double standard. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like what I was saying. I mean, if the Pumpkins came out and sold Muzzle, I think a lot of people would be like, they're just trying to make money. Like, we already heard Muzzle, we already bought Melancholy and Infinite Sadness, you know? And I think there would be a lot of validity to that criticism. And I think the band does, and I think that's why you see the anger in the lawsuit. You know, like, the phrasing was, in the lawsuit, Virgin Records has irreparably harmed the group, their reputation, and goodwill with their fans. I mean, clearly, you know, that's what Billy thinks is going on, is that people would be angry if he sold Muzzle, you know? I don't know.
So another thing... Go ahead.
There's got to be like a threshold too. I mean, if you're not in complete control of your music catalog, and they have written those types of bylines into their contracts, you know, if they sell one song to an ad like Ford Focus, or not sell a song but sell the rights to be able to play a 10 or 15 second clip of it, you know, and we all know that Billy Corgan is an anal retentive man and very, very particular about the way he does business. But you've got to have control over how often that happens. It's just like, you know, in marketing, when you don't want to touch your customer more than once a week or more than twice a month or something like that, you know, you just really can't have the perception out there that you're trying to be over the top with the advertising that you do actually end up doing. So, I mean, it's all about saturation, I guess.
I mean, that reminds me. I mean, you do hear the Pumpkins sometimes on, isn't it Major League Baseball, where people have heard them a few times?
I hear them a lot on NBA basketball games, so I like how we all named a different sport. But
yeah, there you go. Billy's a big fan of all, so...
Well, do they license those, though?
I'm not sure. It could be just a package deal kind of thing.
Well, I mean, obviously radio stations play Pumpkin songs and they pay royalties, so I think, is that what you're asking? Did the leagues pay the band for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be.
I would imagine. I mean, I've heard the Pumpkins on NFL last year a few times here in New York, and it may be a local licensing thing too, I'm not sure, but I don't know.
Well, another interesting quote that I saw in a lot of the stories about this lawsuit was that Billy had gone to Virgin about releasing parts of their back catalog, and that was kind of part of not this lawsuit directly, but what kind of led to the animosity that led to this lawsuit was that he approached Virgin about releasing maybe special editions of old albums or kind of repackaging the old albums and releasing them, and Virgin wanted no part of it, yet they also didn't want to sell the band full rights to their music. So, what do you guys think about that? Was it right for Virgin not to release special editions of the albums? Like, that almost does sound kind of like, oh, they're trying to resell us the same material again.
You know, I don't know what to make of that stuff. I mean, I've read it, and I don't want to say that I don't necessarily believe Billy, because I have no idea whether or not to believe him, so I'll take it at face value, but without hearing what Virgin would say, I guess, you know, it just seems like the he said, and it's one half of the story, because I don't know. I mean, he's talked before about, I remember putting out like a different version of Siamese Dream or something, where he puts in like different, you know, he expands it, brings in some songs off Pisces or something. I mean, nobody's ever, you know, he hasn't actually done this. Is it because he didn't want to do it, or because Virgin didn't want to do it? I mean, it sounds like he's saying Virgin didn't want to do it. If you're Virgin Records, Siamese Dream sold for 4 million copies in the U.S., why do you not want to do this? That seems very strange to me. I just don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, especially now that kind of a new generation of music fans are kind of getting to know the Pumpkins. it's kind of a new era of music, and there's probably a lot of younger people, again, I'm kind of dating myself here, a lot of younger people who didn't grow up like we did with all the Pumpkins albums and the Pumpkins on the radio all the time, and I'm sure that there's quite a number of them who would buy Siamese Dream if it was promoted once again and re-released. But that's something they can already do? They can buy it off iTunes now. Is there a need to re-release an album, or just maybe promote the album again?
Well, and, I wonder if it has anything to do, or I would imagine that it has a lot to do, actually, with the internal resources available at some of these big record labels. My brother and a couple of his friends actually were working for a couple of big labels based out of New York here, and they just have so many resources dedicated to finding new talent and doing viral marketing for new talent, that they're maintaining an artist list that is probably 4 to 5 times bigger than the big acts that they used to promote and used to maintain as their top, A-list clientele 10 or 15 years ago. So I've had this conversation with Jason a few times before. On some levels, I just think that the way the big labels operate now is not necessarily focused on promoting those bigger acts that may provide, a midstream revenue, and they're focused more on the pop superstars, like, the stars are aligning this month with Madonna, Janet Jackson, and Mariah Carey all breaking crazy records with their new releases. I think that the labels are focusing both on those folks and spending huge amounts of marketing dollars for their releases because they have this huge career and this very sort of celebrity blog friendly free press built in, because every move they are making is being watched. Right. And then also this sort of taste-making element of, of these 5,000 indie rock bands we have on our register, or, that want to be on our register, which 5 can we, put out a big record this year and have a new, a new hit song or a new hit single that makes it to Apple iTunes commercials. So it seems like the actual division of labor at these record labels has massively changed in a digital age that I think is kind of leaving out these other sort of very popular and very successful bands of the 90s. I mean, think about the other acts that have either reunited or continue to play and what type of label support they're getting. Pearl Jam, not to my knowledge are they getting a lot of support. Even the Stone Temple Pilots reunion, I haven't really heard a lot of press about them.
I just read something about I guess they played a concert the other night. I hadn't even heard anything was going on before that concert. So,
right, but those types of bands are not media icons. They're not breaking the pages. Right. They're not breaking the pages of Perez Hilton or whatwould-TylerDurdenDo.com or the Superficial. Yeah, that's right. They're not coming with built-in publicity. So why spend a lot of money trying to publicize them when you can get, one of your little tiny indie rock bands that you're paying a $50,000, one-time contractual offer, that you think you can place one of their tracks with Perez Hilton and instantly get 4 million downloads on iTunes.
Yeah. I mean, what you said, Jill, makes me think, maybe what's going on is that when Billy says Virgin isn't interested, Billy probably had a plan. He wasn't just like, hey, right, let's put these different copies of Siamese Dream into the stores. He's probably like, okay, you guys go out and promote this reissue with these different tracks, and it'll almost be like this different album, like a different artistic entity. So he probably had a plan, and they didn't like the plan. Right. There's probably more to it than just, if it's just like new albums in the stores and Billy's going to do all the promotion on his website, that seems like that would probably be a pretty good deal from the label standpoint. But Billy's not going to be asking for that. He's going to be saying, hey, get out there and promote me because I want more and different kids to hear my music. I mean, this is one of the biggest things in his mindset and his worldview and his career from the beginning, is that, he talked about when he was growing up hearing Cheap Trick on rock radio in Chicago, and what a difference that was to him to hear, some cool bands like Cheap Trick and Black Sabbath on the radio. And I think, his entire career with the Pumpkins, he's wanted to be that band that is on the radio that is actually worth listening to for kids who don't know anything other than the radio and don't know anything other than MTV. He doesn't want to give up that commercial territory like a lot of these younger bands. They seem very satisfied to just sit around, we're, some super hip band that you have to find out about us through a blog. It's for us. It's for us, and it's for our little community. And Billy has never wanted it to be like that because he recognizes that he wasn't part of that community. He was a kid sitting at home taking care of his younger brother, and he's turned on the loop, whatever that F frequency is in Chicago, and he's trying to hear the rock hour of power, or something, and he wanted to be part of that, and so he's going to go to Virgin with this new Siamese Dream re-release, and he's like, hey, help me get this in front of the kids, help me get this on the, help me get stations playing Siamese Dream again on, classic rock or whoever would play it these days, and let's get these, let's get Best Buy to run a circular so kids out in suburbia who are going to the mall will read about it, and that's the sort of thing he would want. And I think the story you paint of the business situation at the labels today, which is just the way it is, but that situation suggests that, good reasons why that maybe wouldn't be very appealing to the label because they have limited resources. And
go ahead. Well, I think that the actual internal dynamics of the record labels have changed too, because I think that the staff they hire in particular affects sort of the long-term plans that they develop for these, artists. And I personally know 2 managers at Atlantic Records that are under the age of 25. They're thinking of what am I going to do to sell this particular band and then dispose of them in a year, as opposed to this band has a 25-year, history in rock music, and how do I continue to strategically place them so that they will be continually successful for the next.
Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, this was all we were able to record this week. I'd especially like to apologize to Andrew, as we had a lot of technical problems with his internet connection this week. As we continue to hopefully improve at this, we hope to bring you a steady weekly show with fewer technical problems and more interesting conversation. As our show draws to a close this week, we'd like to get your feedback. Have an idea for a topic? A burning question you'd like to hear the panel discuss? Contact us through the Hipsters United blog by pointing your web browser at www.hipstersunited.com/blog/contact, or send an email to Chris, CHRIS, at hipstersunited.com. Please include your real first name and where you're from so that we can properly attribute your comments. Finally, we'd like to end each show with a historic Pumpkins performance, and since this is the first week and we are Hipsters United, we're going with Cherub Rock from August 14th, 1993 at the Cabaret Metro in Chicago, Illinois. Have a great week, and beware all those angels with their wings glued on.
You're not bored, are you? If you're bored, we'll stop. Are you bored?
Oh, no. Come on, kids, let's rock.
look out. Give in. Doesn't matter what you've done. Stay cool. And be somebody's fool this year. 'Cause they know who is righteous, what is fool. Something. Unite. Come alive, more than we fight to rock for you. I was angels and that we could all stay down. We are fighting and we're scared. You don't stay.
The Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins or Warner Brothers Reprise Music. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio used during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina 2 album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in August of 2000.